If f8 is the default aperture to select, that you select, then 1/125th of a second is probably the shutter speed default, the equivalent. f8 and be there is the same. Select f8 and most things are bound to be in focus or acceptably sharp. Select f8 and just go out and shoot some subjects. 1/125th of a second is a recommended default then, to avoid camera shake. In many instances, it will be the one that the camera would choose to match f8 for correct exposure. Fast enough to avoid camera shake and fast enough to freeze many subjects. Very middle of the road though. If this shutter speed was a colour, it would probably be an off-white, eggshell white maybe. So what are the bolder colour settings then? What are the vibrant reds of the shutter speeds? The bright yellows? If Samuel L. Jackson's purple lightsaber was a shutter speed, for instance, what would it be? Well, I guess any of these are as far away as possible from 1/125th of a second that you can go. 1/4000th of a second, the whole second maybe, or even 30 seconds. A lot happens in 30 seconds. Well, yes, but sometimes you don't even have to go that far. So in this video, I want to discuss those more adventurous shutter speeds. But before I do, I need to sell you some stuff. I've got this van load of E6 subscriptions that I need to get rid of. I have a few boxes full of my new ebook, Photography Rules, and I have a few workshops with spaces that need filling. You don't need a new website. You don't need to sell your camera. But you do need to check out my website to see what I offer that can help you improve your photography. The best money you will ever spend. Go to my website, see all that sparkles and treat yourself. Go on, you deserve it. So how far you go with your shutter speeds depends on your camera. Each model has different limits, so what's yours? Do you know? And when was the last time you went there? When did you choose a setting that was as fast as your camera can offer and shoot at that speed? When did you seek out a subject that could benefit from that speed? The manufacturers included that speed on your camera, so they obviously intended it to be selected from time to time, I guess. But even if you don't shoot subjects that require that kind of setting, those high speeds, and that's me too, I guess, you can still make use of those high shutter speed settings. Think sunny day, think being creative, think shallow depth of field, like I discussed in the apertures video, that one up there. Shooting wide open at f1.4 on a bright sunny summer's day, even at ISO 100, your camera may need to opt for one of those high speed settings to obtain correct exposure. And rather than the shutter speed flashing red in the viewfinder warning of overexposure, if you check your camera, you'll probably find that it can access the higher settings it has with the electronic shutter rather than the mechanical one. A little tip there, that's what electronic shutter is for, if you don't know. That's where I use these higher settings creatively. These high shutter speeds will freeze fast moving subjects, but does that create a creative result? I'm not so sure. But to help out with getting a wide aperture setting in bright light, maybe more. Now, if you head down the other end of the shutter speed scale to the smaller numbers, well, that's where I find the creativity with shutter speeds really kicks in. It's a progressive scale, and the slower you go, the more the movement is revealed in a scene or subject, and the creativity increases. Personally, I find 1/8 of a second is where things really start to get exciting. Now, years ago, this kind of setting meant one thing. It meant mentioning that horrible thing. You know the one. Yeah, the tripod. Ugh. If you wanted sharp results, and by sharp I mean free of shake rather than out of focus, it meant having to put your camera on a tripod. But now IBIS, in-body image stabilizing, has made this a thing of the past, made it easier to shoot slower shutter speeds, do it handheld, which opens up the creativity to be, well, more creative. I first discovered this about 12 years ago with the original Olympus EM5, and I'm still shooting that way and still discovering its advantages. 1/8 of a second is when the world starts getting exciting. Things start to blur. people do, cyclists do, cars do, transport does. Now we can be more creative. Now we can add impact and make exciting results. Much more exciting than boring old 125th of a second. But that's just the start. What if we go lower and slower? How slow can you go? If you don't know, if you haven't tried, you haven't lived. I think it's important to know how low you can shoot and still successfully get a sharp result. If you don't know your limit, find out, test it. So the lower you can go, the better. It's probably not much more than 1/8 of a second. And as we head towards the whole second, then we will unfortunately need to use the dreaded tripod. But now the tripod is our friend again. It serves a purpose, as now we can start going way up the other end of the shutter speed dial. Forget 1/8 of a second, let's do 8 seconds instead, or 30 seconds, or even a minute. What about 2 minutes, 4 minutes, or even 8 minutes? At these long shutter speed settings, we will of course need to add a filter to compensate. Otherwise our results will just look like this. At night, up to 30 seconds is possible, but any longer, especially during the day, then we need to think about using ND filters. ND filters allow you to use any of those shutter speed settings whenever you want. Same as your ISO allows you to use any of the faster shutter speed settings when you want. All these extreme of shutter speed settings need the light controlled and held back, or your sensor made more sensitive to allow these settings. Most cameras can go up to ISO 3200, 6400 or beyond without breaking much of a sweat, so use those settings if you need the speed. ND filters, and we're talking about the full colour ones here, not the graduated type that just control the brightness of the sky. These will cut the light reaching the sensor and allow you to use those longer shutter speeds, and they come in different strengths. I use a 3-stop for general use, a 6-stop for being more creative, which most of the time still allows handheld shooting, and then a 10 and 15 stop for those multiple seconds and multiple minute exposures. These days, having done all that long exposure malarkey, I'm using these filters to help me add the blur myself. Often referred to as ICM, intentional camera movement, I've started to experiment with this more myself. No blurred trees in forests for me though, I'm finding my own ideas and subjects. Even walking along whilst taking the picture to add blur this way. And this can be done with just your phone too, with the right app. So now we are being creative with our shutter speeds. We are using more of the settings available. Instead of freezing subjects, we are purposely blurring them. Most cameras have a choice of 16 shutter speed settings, not including the open B setting or the electronic ones. But how many are you actually using? You've paid for them, they've cost you money, so you might as well make use of them, right? So whenever I don't select f8 for a picture, I feel like I'm breaking free. Whenever I'm not using 1/125th of a second, I feel like I'm being more creative, more adventurous. Every click of the dial, every half stop I move away from that default, well, who knows where it'll take me. So what's your favourite shutter speed? Which one is giving you your best results? And more importantly, which one will you use next? I'll see you next time.